Voilà, on est spécialisé dans l'efficacité.
So we're looking at energy efficiency in tropical areas. We are based in the French islands with an agency in Bordeaux. So we were looking at the OECS countries where renewable use is very low. They use a lot of fossil fuels, and so there's a high electricity consumption. So this is in total contradiction with the goals that have been set forth for the energy transition. This is by the decarbonization of energy production by using renewables and also by increasing efficiency of building and construction. So we have to really have an expert eye to see what a building is that is both efficient and comfortable for the people using the building. So we looked at this with two studies and how we will be able to really emphasize energy efficiency so that we could design something that is both adapted for the users and for the area. So all of this stuff is online, but I'm going to talk to you about the first study, which was a measurement campaign in Martinique and Guadeloupe with the various territorial stakeholders. It was a very large measurement campaign looking at energy use of the buildings. We wanted to start it before COVID, but then it was postponed a little bit. So we looked at what was the actual consumption of 100 buildings during one calendar year. So you can see here the various watt meters that were put on fridges, freezers, and there's also an electrical panel, which then records each consumption for each electricity provider that is hooked up to this panel. So there is a lot of data we could see on that area. What was using the most? Why? If it was performant, efficient or not, the different behavior of the users, the different building structuralities, and also how it was then put in place. And we then try to influence public policy concerning consumption, which is trying to really foster energy transition. This was the first campaign in the Caribbean. So I could go on about this for a long time, but let's look at a few key numbers so that we could see what the measurement campaign really brought forward. So we're looking at the results from Martinique. The first consumption tool was freezer and fridges, and we didn't expect this. It corresponds to 32% of electricity consumption of a household. Notwithstanding what I just said, usually the freezers and fridges are not really emphasized upon in the public possibility. We know that there's been emphasis put on water heating done by solar, whereas this is actually a very low consumption mechanism. But we were able to find in this study that we saw that there was really a gap and that we had to then modify the public policy and really to target fridges and freezers. There were other conclusions that we could make. We won't look at them here, but the measurement campaign allowed us to have these numbers. And maybe this allowed us to extrapolate these results upon the territory at large and then to define public policy concerning housing, offices, industry. There were such studies were done on commercial buildings concerning allow us to be able to see. So we know what's really happening in real time to define and adapt the public policies that are relevant.
The second study that we are going to mention, it's within the Interreg program. We have some deliverables that are available. This study is more a macro study because it included several countries, the member states of the OECS, with a wide objective that was to assess the general level of energy efficiency of the commercial buildings, to identify the actions to be carried out, whether for commercial or public buildings, and suggest recommendations of public policy for 18 months. We have first a very macro phase. We deal with all the existing regulations of the different countries, a lot of interviews, and then we identify exemplary projects. And in cooperation with the steering committee, we selected 3 countries representative of all the other countries, and we pushed forward the study, and the results of the second phase were extrapolated to the rest of the territories. We studied the market of the construction with the energy efficiency, and we made different energy audits on different buildings. And this is a representation which is not perfect, but it gives a general idea. So it's less technical, but this is the first level, in fact, when we want to define a public policy of energy efficiency, to have a macro vision of the different fields with the main stakes. And once they are identified, you can go into more details where the consumption comes from, how we can reduce it, with which type of actions. So based on these results that we compared with measurements campaign made in Martinique and Guadeloupe, we can see the different impact of different types of buildings in different fields of activities, the impact of supermarkets, for instance, and we can go back to the study of buildings with flats, the impact of the cold in supermarkets, the impact of airport, the impact of hotels, hospitals. But it's one airport, 2 hospitals, so it's a high consumption with a small number of buildings. But then we have a high consumption with a lot of buildings like supermarkets, certain types of restaurants, certain hotels. So we could identify this and justify and see how we have to target specific actions for these type of buildings in particular. If we look into more details, these are averages, of course, but we can see the trends. If you look at the supermarket, 2/3 of the consumption is electrical, is looked to the refrigeration, the cooling. So we have to focus on the territory, how we can reduce this consumption with a better management or increasing the performance. And we can see that in other fields of activities like offices, in the air conditioning, representing the 2/3 of the consumption. So actions are very well known, like when we identify performing lighting system or the LED, we use more and more LEDs, performing electrical tubes. So this consumption is very secondary. And when we define our public policy, we have to focus on some segments in particular to be relevant and performing on the territory. And then the work managers will make consumptions energy savings. So I invite you to read this study, all the deliverables that we produced. And at the end of all these steps, of course, we discuss with the members of the steering committee, and then we can suggest a certain number of recommendations. And these recommendations are: how can we stimulate, boost the request of energy efficiency? It's not visible, it's invisible. You cannot see it, when a building is energy efficient. As you can see on this picture, here, but maybe inside this building, it is consuming too much energy, so it's very difficult to see. So we have to stimulate the demand. How can we get some first gains, easy gesture? It's very cheap to do that, and it produces savings, and then we can invest more. Do not forget that it is a good thing to stimulate the demand, but the offer has to be adequate. And as we can see in Guadeloupe and Martinique, some works have been done with partners in different branches like solar water, hot water, air conditioning, performing air conditioning, isolation system, isolation materials, solar protection. These are essential aspects. When you have in charge of a public policy, you have to take everything into account, both the offer and the demand, training and information, and last but not least, the regulations, how we can strengthen the regulations, incentives, and then for some fields of activities, maybe it looks so easy and it's very profitable. We have to think how to oblige, how to forbid some products on the territory within the OECD states. We have to encourage, favor, be more demanding on the air conditioning systems, forbid the less performing equipment because the prices are very similar. So if we do not forbid things, of course, the market, we try to gain some more dollars on these bad quality products. And at the end, the consumers, it's bad for the consumers and it's bad for the territory. I was quite quick and short, but I'm available to discuss with you. I invite you to read the conclusions of all these studies. Thank you very much, Mr. Guerrin.